We gotta fill the dead space somehow. All
Mm-hmm.
right, waiting for the magical transitional period for when we are live on the Twitch and the service and all the good stuff. And we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to OWL by the Numbers, your one-stop spot for all things fantasy Overwatch League. I am your host, Tumblely Drunk, and tonight on episode 11, we are down 2, but you know what? And I'm here to hold down the fort. We'll be discussing Baptiste Stage 2 Week 1 debut in the Overwatch League. Maybe gripe about how terrible bunker compositions are for fantasy and just spectating. I mean, let's be honest here. But it was a wild Stage 2 Week 1. We got quite a bit to go over tonight. And, despite, having half of us here, that doesn't mean we're going to put in half the effort. No, we are going all in tonight, Ed. And I just got to let you know, before I introduce you, we got to say thanks to everyone who's hanging out with us tonight on Twitch for our live show. And thank all of our repeat listeners out there. So as you can tell, we have Blaze of Bob out. Ramses is currently out. He may be hopping on in just a little bit, maybe like halfway through the show. I'm not going to count on it just because, it'd make less sense for him to come in at the very tail end. But, maybe he'll be here for you to gloat towards him. That remains to be seen. But Ed, how has this past week been treating you?
I mean, when you talk about a fantasy perspective, it's going amazing. I mean, I went 3-0 this week. I'm in first place in 2 of the leagues, second place in 1 of the leagues. The second place, the one I'm owning a team with Bob in. We got Overwatch League back this week. It's the start of a crazy new meta. And, it's not just GOATs. It's, there is no meta. Like, I can safely say there is no meta in Overwatch right now because perfect example is the Hunter Justice matchup. 27 heroes were played for at least 1 minute in that match. Like, that's not a meta. Plain and simple. So, sometimes people will play GOATs. Yeah, sometimes people will play Dive. Yeah, sometimes people will play whatever the hell it is the Chengdu Hunters play. It's been great. It's been fun. I mean, we have Game of Thrones coming up this week. We have Endgame coming up in 2.5 weeks. We have the NFL Draft coming up. The Masters is this week. Baseball started. It is a chaotic month. So, and it's only the 9th. Love it. Love April so much. So, how's your week been? I feel I should give you the time to finally be able to say something about one of the leagues that you're in with me. Yeah.
Oh my God, guys! It's only been what week is this? 6? Yeah, week 6, and I finally won one in the Raw Scorn League with the Foul Play League. So
you're better than the Valiant.
This is true. I have more wins than a Valiant, and you know what? I did meet a pretty notable person to take that first win, and pretty happy with it. It was only a matter of time before I would eventually pick up a win, and came over Blevin, so that just made it even more sweeter. But I have to say, Ed, in regards to unlimited drafts, killing it. You and I were talking pre-show.
You are killing it. Yep.
I am in 3 leagues. I am in the High Noon.gg one. I'm in ours as well as a High Noon podcast league. And respectively, I am like 3rd, 1st, and 1st. So I'm winning both the podcast ones, and I'm 3rd overall in the High Noon.gg one. So at least from a fantasy perspective, I'm doing good-ish. I don't know. It's just one of those things, because it's like everywhere else, like, the Foul Play one is kind of like the odd man out where that's by far my worst league, but everything else is very middle of the pack, but I'm very good at the unlimited draft, so I at least have that going for me, but it's balancing everything out, which I'm okay with, but at least I can gloat about something and just not have anything, just be like, well, I did Midland this week, so I guess I'm doing all right. So.
Yeah, I would like to point out that in the Foul Play League, I beat Bob this week. So Bob's purposely not on the show.
He's ducking you.
So he can't face me head to head. And he lived through the shame of losing to me. Now this upcoming week's going to be interesting because in the Foul Play League and then the Overwatch League Network podcasters group, I played Ramses, Julian in both leagues. So I feel there's going to be a bet there in some capacity. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it because there's a lot of fantasy changes that popped its ugly head this week.
Absolutely. So to start things off, let's quickly recap what went down in the Overwatch League for the start of stage number 2. So on Thursday, we opened up with the New York Excelsior defeating the Philadelphia Fusion 4-0. We saw Boston Uprising with the debut of RCK defeat Atlanta Reign 3-2, which was a reverse sweep, 1 of 2 for Boston in the opening week here. We saw the LA Gladiators defeat the Shanghai Dragons 3-1, and then we capped off Thursday with the Paris Eternal picking up a 4-0 win over the Guangzhou Charge. Definitely a rough week for the Charge, as they did not take an individual map in 8 maps, so yikes. On Friday, we saw London Spitfire play Florida Mayhem to a very close series. This one ended 2-1 in favor of London. We saw Toronto Defiant defeat Washington Justice 3-1. The San Francisco Shock defeated the LA Valiant to, just continually to be able to gloat about the California Cup. Not that it was much of a contest in this situation with a 4-0 win. And then we also saw the LA Gladiators stomp out the Fisher Effect as they defeated the Seoul Dynasty 3-2 in what was an incredible series. Moving on to Saturday, we saw Philadelphia Fusion defeat the Florida Mayhem 3-1. Boston Uprising reverse swept Toronto Defiant 3-2. New York Excelsior defeated Shanghai Dragons 3-0. And then to cap off Saturday, we saw the Chengdu Hunters sweep the Paris Eternal 4-0, which would lead us to the 4th and final day, that being Sunday, April 7th. So to start things off, we had the San Francisco Shock defeat Guangzhou Charge 4-0. London Spitfire defeated Atlanta Reign 4-0. Vancouver Titans defeated Urahanjo Spark 4-0. And then the Chengdu Hunters defeated Washington Justice in a what meta match, where we saw literally everything but goats with a scoreline of 3-1. And I have to say, Ed, out of all of the matches, that one in particular, a match that I had absolutely zero interest in, ended up being probably the most entertaining match that we have seen. I'm not going to say throughout the entirety of the season, but you could definitely put it maybe top 5, at least in that discussion.
Oh, it was easily top 5. Yeah, the craziness you saw, the crazy holds you saw, where you're just honestly, the Hunters probably should have lost this series. There were a lot of times, there should have been a map 5. And somehow they pull off the hold. It was fun. It was just fun to see this style of Overwatch. Jinmu on the fair, Oasis was a super fun map to watch. Mm-hmm. Amen went insane. I think he had 200 knockbacks in this series. To top his crazy stat against Paris, I think when he had 163, he decided to have 200 this time. It's he is unkillable on that Hammond. It's insane the way he plays it.
It's amazing how one change completely makes Hammond so much better of a character. And to an extent, there were times where Wrecking Ball is still coming out as a stall character, but we've seen how much better the stall variation is too. And we got to see that in the Dynasty game when Fisher swapped over to Wrecking Ball and just delayed for what felt like an eternity.
Yeah, and you're starting to see a lot more Hammond, because Hammond is probably if you're going to be running solo tank, mm-hmm. Hammond's the best. And you saw that a lot because the Dragons were running it, so you saw Gamsu on it. Boston Uprising were even using it, and you saw Fusions on it. Guangzhou Charge were using it, but Guangzhou Charge sucked. You saw Yakpeng on it, and I mean, we've seen Muma on it. Not obviously they didn't play this week, but like he's even been on it. But you're starting to see more and more of it in these, triple DPS solo tank 2 healers, like teams, and that's where it's really just screwing with the meta right now. Is this single tank, 3 DPS, 2 healers, where one of the healers is Mercy, but they're stuck to Pharah. So you're starting to see the flex support flex over to a more healer centric, the perfect example is Twilight this week. Mm-hmm. Twilight was not on Zen.
A
lot of Ana, because they can actually sustain heals that way. Like they can actually heal people and give not burst, but better healing than a Zenyatta can. If somebody gets low. So they're switching over to that because the Mercy is preoccupied boosting and healing the Pharah. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on in the flex support, like fantasy wise, because you did see a large dip in the output of the flex support here players. I think Hiding.gg actually tweeted something out today that they actually, as a whole, put out the least amount of fantasy points.
Yeah, and what's crazy too is like just the pick rate for Zenyatta compared to the last week of Stage 1 was down almost 35%. And then we've seen a lot of variations to the 3-3 when it comes to Reinhardt getting swapped out for Winston, to the point where the pick rates between the two was only like a 0.2% differential. It's never been that close. And even in Wrecking Ball's case, who would be the other tank option there, he saw a 20.5% pick rate, which was a pretty significant jump as well. So it was just crazy to see how drastically kind of like the meta pick rate kind of swapped in just a span of a week with all of these balance changes. And we basically got to see, I think the only hero we didn't see at all in the past week was Ashe, but there was a couple of other heroes that saw very limited playtime, like Torb, Sim, Doomfist, Reaper being the other one. But we got to see a lot of cool stuff this week. A lot of stuff that maybe we'd like to forget. Kind of like Jinmu just dragon striking the floor on the Watchpoint Gibraltar, which was fantastic. I know what he was trying to do, but man, like that just made me shake my head. I was like, man, you can't do that.
Yeah, I mean, you saw a lot of crazy thing like that. I wish we would see more Ashe.
Mm-hmm.
Not because, I mean, she's fun to watch and everyone wants to see Bob, but from a fantasy perspective, I feel Ashe could probably put out the most actual fantasy numbers for a offensive hero. Simply because of the bomb does ticking damage that can't be, avoided. Once it's on you, you're taking that damage regardless. So you throw it into a pile almost like an Ana grenade, and you just skyrocket in DPS. Your Bob is going to get so much damage output. Like, you're going to be the Moira of DPS. You're not going to get all these final kills, final blows, so on and so forth, but you're going to be a part of a lot of dust and put out a lot of damage. So you're going to be putting out those fantasy numbers, but you're not going to be getting like the final blows. You're not going to be getting like the Hanzo headshots as much as Hanzo would be, and so on and so forth. So I really wish we would have seen some Ashe, but I can't complain. It's better than what we had last stage. But like, just to point out like the massive difference between like the end of the stage 1 to stage 2. So the average support in, let's see, March 14th was over 150 points per week. This week, it was 105.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. Offense peaked in that same time at about 140, and it was at 115. And tanks were actually peaked at 128-ish, and they actually finished above support for this week. So it's like, It's complete opposite of what we are used to. And you're seeing much lower scores than what we expected. Now, part of that also is there were a lot of ass whoopings this week.
Yeah, a lot of 4-0s.
To
that point too, I will say the other side of that too is since we are seeing a lot more DPS centric compositions, that tank line for the most part is playing Winston, and they're getting a lot of cleave damage, so that's definitely factoring in more total points. But yeah, the Zenyatta fall off was pretty significant for sure.
Yeah, and you started to see like the carry heroes from last year start to come through. You start to see, you saw Prophet, you saw Carpe up there, you saw Blase up there. I mean, you're gonna see a lot of Boston Uprising up there, but it's again, it's a skewed number because they did play 10 matches this week. But yeah, no, actually. The last match I was just about to say, double tap everything, said Sunder's all 4-0s. Actually, it was 3 4-0s and 1 3-1. But it was, it was insane nonetheless. I mean, you had, you had a 4-0, a 3-0, and a 3-1 on Saturday.
Right.
You had a 2-1, a 3-1, a 4-0 on Friday. You had 2 4-0s on Thursday and a 3-1. It was just an ugly week all around, and it showed from the fantasy numbers perspective. That's why if you like Julian, I'm going to throw Julian under the bus because he's not here right now. Last week, I forgot who he was playing. I want to say it was A. Smith.
Okay.
And yeah, it was A. Smith last week. And he went off because he started Aim God, RCK, Blase. So he started 3 Boston Uprising players. Well, that's 30 matches between the 3 of them.
Yeah, 30 maps. Yeah.
So that is insane. So he A. Smith had a crazy week this past week too, but he went up against the person who basically hit the fantasy jackpot when it comes to so he had RCK. Oh, he had Kelix too. So it was actually Blase, Kelix, and RCK. But then he also had Fury, Neko, Hydration, and EQO. So he had a lot of map 5s there, which is what you want in fantasy. But anyone who started anyone from, I don't know, the Vancouver Titans got screwed. Shock to some extent kind of got screwed. The Valiant, as bad as the Valiant looked, they usually have been able to put out semi-decent fantasy numbers, but they couldn't this week because they got squashed 4-0 so badly. So yeah, it could turn around this upcoming week with some better matchups, but looking at the matchups for next week, we're going to see a lot of 4-0s next week. So we could see the same thing. So, gone are the days of relying on your flex supports to really pop off in those numbers. And you got to rely more on your DPS characters.
It is important to note, though, that in the last week, we did get to see quite a few Overwatch League debuts. So why don't we talk a little bit about how some of these debut stars did in that opening series? Because we got to see, some pretty decent numbers. We got to see a couple of people, maybe underwhelm. But, we had someone who basically speed ran Path to Pro in 20 days and made his Overwatch League debut, that being I'm 37 with the Toronto Defiant. So who debuted in the last week in Overwatch League?
Well, we had 5 actual, true, we just started. Baby Bay from Atlanta, the bet me and I lost the bet to Ramses, debuted for the Atlanta Reign. And he actually had a pretty decent week, had 245.16 combined points. 141 was his highest single game. Again, I still don't trust him, just for the simple fact that I don't think Atlanta knows what they're doing right now. Like I said, the next person I'm going to talk about is kind of an example of how I don't think they know what they're doing. And that is FRD, or Fried, or as I'm calling him, Fred. Fred from the Atlanta Reign. He had 247.52 combined points. Highest was 137.13. Now, Fried is an off tank, but he didn't play off tank the entire time. Sometimes they had Endlayer in there. Endlayer played D.Va too. And you're like, hey, they had Dako. Dako was a pretty good stage 1 off tank. He was. Nobody knows why Fried actually played over Dako. It was just one of those late pickups, kind of like, oh, by the way, we signed a backup flex tank, and then all of a sudden it's like, hey, you're starting, and you're going to be taking over for Dako. Like, Dako may be sick, we don't know, but like both of them put up good fantasy numbers, but I'm still skeptical on that because who knows what's going to happen with that team. Like, they couldn't even decide if they were going to start Kodak or Dogman. So you can't rely on this team for consistency. I mean, their best player the whole week, and actually one of the best of the week, was their main tank. Like, Popo had, what was it? Popo was the number 2 tank, and he had 237 points combined for a main tank. That's insane. Like, we don't see main tanks with that many fantasy points. So I don't know. So we had those two. For Paris, we had Gray. Gray came in for hip, performed pretty well. I actually really like Gray. He had 252.73 combined points, 128.73 for a single. I mean, as far as support players go this week, he was right there. He was right there towards the top. Not at the actual top, but top 10, top 12. And he's somebody out there that you could have, he was probably the number 1 pickup request coming into this week, because it's hard to find a flex support that's starting on the waiver wire right now. You can go out and find any form of a main support anytime you want. It's that flex support that you can't find. So Gray was definitely somebody a lot of people picked up. And then the speed runner, the Super Mario Star strategy himself, I'm 37. Yes, he can speak English. Came out, and just from his fantasy numbers, you're probably thinking he didn't play that well. Well, he had 177.71 combined points in 2 matches. But in the first match, he didn't play the entire series. I think he only played, 2 maps? I think he only played 2 maps in the first series. So he didn't play a full 2 series. He looks like he's going to be the starting offensive weapon for Toronto. And you have to, nobody knows anything about this kid. Nothing. He played 1 match in Open Division, played 1 match in Contenders, and is now started in the Overwatch League. All this within 20, 30 days of each other. So, nobody has any idea about this guy. And anyone who comes up that quickly and is played 2 professional matches and is now starting in the Overwatch League, you have to realize something's up with this kid. So he's another one I definitely think you go out and pick up. And then the other one is for my Hanzo Spark, and that's Sasin. Sasin he's an off tank, but he also played a little bit of DPS. He does split time with Rhea. I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of him because he only scored 38 points. I think they were just testing it out to see how he played with the team. You could see more of him, but I would not pick him up this week. So, yeah, those are the 5 that came out. In order for pickups, honestly, I'd go Gray 1, I'm 37-2, Baby Bay 3, FRD 4, Sasin last. And I wouldn't even pick up Sasin. So, I don't know. Who do you think should be picked up from the waiver wire this week? Because there should be a lot of switches with all the meta changes.
Yeah, you know, it's so hard to say because again, like this is going to vary between league to league. You know, some areas are going to have a lot more depth. I know it like in some of our podcaster ones, like there's no way you can even find a flex support at all. But let me just quick. I'm going to pull up some free agency sentence really quick, just so I can get an idea of who is on the waiver wire right now. All right, so um. I feel like the whole Kodak and Kodak is like such a weird case right now because his rating, like if you look at his rating, he's posting like 25 points for the overall rating. Per I think it's like per 10 minutes based on Heimdall.gg, which is an insane number. But you don't know which way Atlanta is going to turn. Like, I don't know if they're going to prefer to play Kodak, if they're going to go with their other options. You have someone like Architect who has done fairly well, but we didn't really get to see him. So it's like they're shying away from that Flex Ana option with Architect, and we still haven't seen a ton of Genji play either. So he's kind of been like the odd man out. And when you have someone like Rascal, who is basically just been like the Swiss Army knife for the shock, it kind of puts Architect in a spot where he's not in a position to see that much playtime right now. So, I think Saya player would probably be the best option right now in regards to like someone that's probably going to be on the free agency wire just due to the fact.
Oh yeah, M-Layer is way too much of a risk. I mean, he played, yes, but he started 2 matches. He played with Baby Bay. He replaced Baby Bay. It's just like it goes into we don't know what is going through the minds of the Atlanta Reign coaches and what they're going to do. I mean, the only ones I think right now that I would start with certainty going into next week from that entire team is Popo and Erster. Everyone else, I'd be, Baby Bay, you could probably start with some confidence. I would not start Fried with confidence. I would not start M-Layer with confidence. I would not start Dogman or Poco, or Dogman or Kodak. So, but there's a lot of good people still out there. I'm just going to rattle some off, so bear with me here. And it's mainly DPS people that if you can fit them on your team, get them. So Blase and Color Hex are 2 DPS I have found were available in a lot of leagues. And they've been performing very well. Color Hex especially has been performing pretty well on the Widowmaker, actually. I think he had a map or two or a series where he had like 49% scope crit accuracy on Widow, which is insane. Birdring seems to be back for the Spitfire, which is good. And most people dropped him because he got dropped for guard. Soon is back, it seems, and putting up decent fantasy numbers. So if somebody dropped him, Soon wouldn't be a bad one. You said Saya player. Stitch from the Vancouver Titans is a DPS, phenomenal DPS. But Siaminsu was just a better Zarya. We saw that. But now that they're not running the 3-3, Stitch is back in the lineup. And Stitch is very good. So I would definitely go pick him up. Fitz from Soul Dynasty is someone who started this week over Fleta. Because Fleta did not play at all this week, which was baffling. But Fitz came in, performed pretty well fantasy-wise. So that's someone to keep an eye on. And then my last DPS player, and this is something he didn't play this week. Their team didn't play this week. And that's Zachary. And the reason I say Zachary is a pickup is because of the retirement of Effect. Like, before Effect retired, you always had that in the back of your mind, like, okay, Effect's probably going to get play time. Are him and Zachary going to split time? Are Effect and AKM going to split time? Like, what's going to happen? Now it's pretty clear cut. It's Zachary and AKM are the two DPS players for that team, and they will be playing the majority of the time. I don't know if Taimu will ever get in anymore. He's kind of seemed to fill the IDD QD type role with the fuel. So I would definitely see if Zachary's out there, maybe stash him on your roster, see how he performs. And lastly, in the tank, Elsa, Chengdu Hunters. If you can pick up Elsa, that is another one I would definitely pick up. So those are some just some of the people that I would say go pick up.
All right, let's see if my camera's really zoomed in right now. I can't tell just based on the lobby. We'll find out momentarily. Okay, let me. Whatever. We'll work with it. Whatever. Okay, so obviously a lot of movement there, a lot of decent pickups that you could probably still get. In regards to like player performances too, like it was a really weird week. We saw Space only put up like 56 points this week for the Valiant, and he did show a little bit more flexibility because he wasn't primarily just running D.Va. He was playing a little bit of Sombra, so that was a new look from him. In Layer, who we were talking about earlier, was actually flexing over to D.Va a decent amount, and there was like a rotating share there on that role. And Guxue, I don't want to discredit him as a fantasy option because, for one, the Spark went up against the Titans. But I do feel like in the current meta, when it comes to main tanks, Winston players are definitely going to come out ahead. So Guxue is definitely an option to take a look at. So outside of that, we did have a lot of strong performances in stage 2, week number 1. And, whether it is based off of how many maps teams played, I will say London Spitfire across the board put up some pretty phenomenal numbers. You had Bogosian, who really came back after some pretty mediocre performances, putting up 351.5 combined points. His best outing was 204, which I believe was also the best of the week. So you actually had someone top in both combined and best again. We saw the return of Prophet, also to see Prophet playing DPS again. Aim God put up some pretty ridiculous numbers. Shaz has still had that level of consistency. But just looking at the field, who would you nominate for your player of the week?
All right, I'm taking Boston players out of this because of the 10-map series. I just can't give that to them on a per-map basis. And you already mentioned Prophet. I'm going to go with EQO. So the reason I'm going with EQO is he did 243.3. Best was 155.64. The reason I'm picking him is he scored that high. So he was a top 8-9 DPS this week. And he had he played against New York Excelsior when New York stomped them 4-0. So he was on the opposite end of a 4-0 stomp. And then they were on the opposite end of a stomp themselves in 3-1 over the Mayhem. And he still managed to pump up those numbers. Like, it's a simple fact of he should not have scored based on like the map wins and stuff like that. He shouldn't have scored 200 points. 225 points, and here he is, dropping, 243 points for the 2 maps, and it's kind of crazy that he was able to do that well when the rest of his team actually did not perform at all. Like Poco, I think, had 70 points in the New York Excelsior game. So I would go EQO, but Prophet is a close second. How about you? Who would your all-star be for this week, or MVP?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to go with Prophet. We've always seen Prophet as kind of the London carry. And a lot of that was just due to one, Birdream not really being in the rotation throughout the majority of stage one. He was definitely struggling on the Zarya role. Prophet basically is just like, yeah, I can do that. And then just basically took control. And now we're getting to see him flex more. And he just had a level of consistency with that 333 combined points. And also his best was 188. So, I mean, that in itself is a pretty monstrous game for a DPS player. I will say, though, Birdream had a very consistent week, too. It just wasn't as prominent as what Prophet was putting up. But, like, if I'm happy to see, like, someone putting up monster numbers, we mentioned the Boston DPS duo of Blase and Color Hex. And yes, I know they played 10 maps, but as someone that has Color Hex in the Raw Scoring League, I've been waiting for him to really reach that next step, and having these other flexibility options is making him a more potent fantasy option, and I really hope that he continues an upward trend. And, I'm still waiting for that Blase Doomfist. It's got to be coming sometime. But I don't know. I'm just happy to see it, though, because it was definitely a very long, rough stretch if you were a Boston DPS owner.
Yes, well, 100%. I mean, Blase is still available in some leagues out there that I see. We need to talk about the Sombra in the room here. And by that, I mean, we touched on it briefly over the past few weeks, but the Sombra in the room is the off-tank switching to Sombra. So when you look at this past week, the top 5 tanks were RCK, Pokpo, Fury, Michelle, and Elsa. So RCK, widely known as, a Sombra off-tank, Sombra diva. You have Pokpo, who's a main tank, Fury, who's just a god on diva. And then you have Michelle and Elsa, who also are Sombra tanks. Are we seeing the rise in the, in the tanks doing DPS roles? Like, as far as fantasy goes, should we be targeting those kind of players? Because they're out there. I mean, when you look at it, Envy also played a lot of Sombra. So does Envy start to go up there? I mean, Meko has played it. Let's see who else. I'm just looking. Hotba has played it. So you're starting to see more and more. I mean, RCK has played the most Sombra of anyone in the Overwatch League. But again, that was skewed because of this week, because he played 10 matches where probably, I think, 7 of them he played Sombra for a good portion. But should we start going towards off tanks that play Sombra as well?
I feel like it's acceptable to do it now. I feel like in stage 1 it was too much of a risk, just due to the fact that not all of the teams were running Sombra in the rotation and swap with their diva. The problem is, though, we're still kind of at that point where this meta is still evolving, and there's a lot of experimentation going on, so we don't know where exactly things are going to kind of settle. But you do have other diva players out there that really haven't flexed off, like Fury this past week was, diva botting it up, and he had a monster week, eating a ton of Graviton Surges. Yeah, if you had one anywhere even near him, it was definitely getting grabbed into the abyss there. So I feel cautiously optimistic, but I do like that with the amount of DPS, chances are you are going to be seeing more Sombra getting played, and you have a lot of these scrappy teams. Boston especially, RCK's really kind of coming to his own in regards to a fantasy option. I don't know if I could put all of the stock in the Sombra players as of yet, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely nice. It's nice that the not top tier actual diva players are getting play as off tanks. So, like, you have your Fury and stuff like that who are, automatic starts in most leagues for off tank. But now you're getting the RCK, the Michelles, the Elsas, the second tier of off tanks who are getting pushed up to the first level because of their Sombra play. So it'll be interesting to see how this progresses. Now, RCK and Michelle are the two that stick out the most because they've been doing it. Michelle has been doing it since week 1 of stage 1. Essentially, has been flexing to Sombra and kind of started a lot of this. And then you're seeing more and more of it. Like you said, Space played a little bit Sombra. Even Fury has played Sombra this season. Not much, but he has played it. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on in the future, especially as Sombra sticks around. God, I hope she doesn't. But, and if that's the case, then the Spark need to step it up and not let Godsby play Sombra ever again. If you ever want to see how not to play Sombra, watch the Spark versus Titans matchup and then follow Godsby. It was ugly. It was just plain old ugly. But yeah, it's interesting. I want another week. Like you said, we talked about earlier. I can't remember. We've done 2 podcasts today already. But to see what happens with Dallas Fuel and Sombra play.
Right.
If Note's going to flex over, or if you're going to get AKM or Zachary to flex over to Sombra, or if they're just not going to run Sombra whatsoever. And I don't think running no Sombra whatsoever is the play because I think the majority of teams are running Sombra in some fashion. So definitely interesting. Keep an eye on the Sombra play from the off tanks.
Right on. Well, let's go ahead and talk about some of the marquee matches really quick for our Pick'ems segment before we talk a little bit about the decision making with this week's Unlimited Drafts, which is very chaotic right now. So I picked a match for each day. So on Thursday we have a Stage 1 semifinals rematch between Vancouver Titans and the Seoul Dynasty. Friday, I picked Chengdu Hunters against Shanghai Dragons. Saturday, we have London Spitfire versus Philadelphia Fusion. And then for Sunday, we have Dallas Fuel versus Paris Eternal. All right, so Titans versus Dynasty. You have the Dynasty, who were one of the few teams in the playoffs who really completed maps against the Titans, outside of course, the Shock. But Dynasty also, maybe knocked down a peg after the Fisher effect was not enough to overcome his former team in the LA Gladiators here in this past week. Now, Ed, the thing that's really curious to me, as Julian is hopping in, is the fact that, looking back at that Chengdu series, we saw Titans really struggle against heavy DPS compositions, and we've seen other DPS looks getting thrown their way. And they've been handling it a lot better. Looks like he's on his phone. And it's just crazy to see how quickly of a turnaround they have made once they have a little bit more preparation. So when it comes to the Titans, they seem to be this team. And, you could go back to see how they did last week on King's Row, especially. These teams are putting up some pretty good run times on offense. And then Titans are just laughing that's cute. Watch me do you one better. And then they finish with 5.5 minutes. And it's crazy to see how fast they could run their offense. So in this series, I'm probably leaning towards a 3-1 score in favor of Vancouver Titans. What are your thoughts on this one, though?
This is going to be, if it's not a 3-1, it's a 4-0.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, the Titans are adapting rather well. Which is saying something since the Stage 1 champions. They're adapting really well. One thing their coach came out and said today that actually took me by surprise and was interesting is he was talking about Hammond play for the team. And he flat out said, he's like, yeah, if we run a Hammond squad, Janu is playing Hammond. He is the best Hammond on our team. And he's like, and that's why and that's why you'll have Bumper on Hanzo, Farah, whatever we really need, we just put Bumper on that role. So you're starting to see some creativity out of them. And then with Stitch in the lineup, it's just adding a whole new layer to this. But yeah, they're going to win 3-1 or 4-0. Easily. So, let's see here. Are you muted?
I'm trying to get Julian in.
Sorry about that.
There we
Sorry
go.
about that. It was I was trying to type in chat on my phone and it wouldn't let me get out of chat to enter the call.
Oh my god, your forehead is so big.
Oh my god, Ed, we're twins.
Oh man, I can't even get a good. There we go.
You have more hair up here than me, so you're an ass.
Hi guys, I left my webcam at home, so I realized that as I was getting here today. So, hi everybody.
Yeah, you're super quiet too.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna be right here then.
Oh Lord, we're getting real up close and personal with you tonight.
All right, Ramsey. So we're doing our pick'ems for Titans versus the Dynasty. Who you got this week?
I don't know how you go anywhere but Titans at this point. Honestly, I really think I wanted to convince myself, like, oh, maybe Vancouver won't be as good when they go back to other comps. Maybe it's just a dive team. And then, of course, I had to think, like, duh, this was a very good dive team back in the day. They've been good for the last couple of years across a bunch of different comps. I don't think it goes anyway but Titans. I do agree, though. I think it's a 3-1. We've seen Vancouver is pretty, I don't know if you would say willing, but Vancouver drops a map here and there to teams, even to teams that don't necessarily deserve it. I'm going to go 3-1 Vancouver. I think my main question is who the heck is going to start between Fitz and Fleta? Because I almost lost my game this week because Fleta didn't play the entire time.
Boo hoo. I mean, it's going to be. I think it will be Fleta. I don't think they're going to bench Fleta. If they bench anyone, bench Munchkin. But don't bench Fleta. But again, we don't know because Soul Dynasty is just like, hey, let's start Marvel. Let's do this random stuff and not do well. So, who really knows with this team?
All right, so on Friday, we have the Chengdu Hunters going up against the Shanghai Dragons. And, Dragons are definitely one of the teams who I could see really popping off with, snipers coming back into rotation. I cannot wait to see DM getting to play a little bit more Widowmaker. But when you look at Chengdu Hunters this stage, their strength of schedule is definitely in their favor. They look like they're going to be a team that's going to be in the playoff discussion for stage number 2. I have to say, we always talked about how Chengdu was a team that was looking to break the 3-3 meta. Now we have seen a little bit more DPS compositions being thrown at them, and they've looked pretty good in these mirror sort of DPS situations. So I'm still going to lean towards the Hunters in this situation, but I feel like the Dragons are still a team that a lot of people are going to be sleeping on. I'm expecting this one to probably go to the distance because we saw how well Washington did. I do not expect to see too much of the, quote, 3-3 meta in this particular series. So I'm expecting some fireworks here, but I think this one will go 3-2 in favor of Chengdu.
I think so, too. I'm going to have to eat my words here because I disagree with Ed when Ed was talking about how we were excited to see Jinmu play in the next couple of weeks. I thought he was a good DPS, but I didn't know if he was going to be able to hold up. And I'm glad to eat my words here. He did very well this last week. Had a lot of impact. His Pharah is clean. I was impressed. Granted, they played Paris and Washington, so I'm not blown away here. But I would be confident going with Jinmu to kind of carry this game going forward. Also, Ameng has proven that yes, he is a good wrecking ball, but he's a very good wrecking ball. I think at this point, the best wrecking ball player in the league.
Mm-hmm.
That Kaio is still solid. I think it's also going to come down to the fact that Shanghai really likes committing to one comp and then staying with that comp, even when it's very, very not suited to the current situation they're in. Yes, Ed?
You're full of crap. I mean, if you look at it, I mean, the first 2 maps they played this past week were 100% different. The first map, they went with 1 tank, no flex tank, and they went triple DPS. The next map, they brought in Geguri, they went trip. They went 3-3. They switched it up. I think Shanghai because they don't like, as much as people love Griguri is not a good off tank. And I think they know their strong suit is not running 3-3. And I think they're starting to realize that they can run the 1 tank, 2 support, triple DPS, and do good on it, because they actually did well on that against New York Excelsior. I'm not saying they did great, but they did well against it. And there he goes. And this is going to be one of those matchups where it's going to be, I hope they break the 27 heroes.
Mm-hmm.
And we get to see 28 in this matchup. Like, they're going to be throwing, we already know that the Hunters are going to do God knows what with Symmetra and all that fun stuff. But I think Shanghai is going to be happy to show that they can do some of these unique things and really flex their DPS players, because they have some good DPS players on Shanghai. It's their tanks are a little on the weak side. Gamsu's good. Their flex tanks are not so good. So I'm very interested. I think the Hunters will win this one as well, but I don't think it's going to be kind of clear cut. I mean, heck, the Hunters, even though they beat the Justice 3-1, they kind of squeaked by a little bit in that 3-1 against the Justice. So I think this is going to be closer. I think a 3-2 is probably going to be a good call.
Yeah, to amend my earlier statement, I agree with you. I think it is going to be a map 5 every map played. I think this will come down to the wire. What I meant was more in a map setting where it's very clear that, like, I was thinking more specifically with the Gladiators game, where going to King's Row, where they got stuck on one comp and they weren't switching off of it, even though that comp was getting hard countered. That's what comes to my mind. I do think that fantasy-wise, it should be a good game. Especially with now that we're seeing a lot more DPS closer to the top of just overall fantasy rankings. I think that Jimmy will be really good. I still think Kyo. I even think Youngjin might even make him a pretty solid fantasy output this week as well.
Looks like Ed's camera went out. Hopefully he can see the chat.
I was like, he is staring very intensely at the side of the screen.
Absolutely. I don't know if you could even see the chat right now. So hopefully, he has switched it up. Or he's PMing me in Discord. Says BeLive won't work for him. Well, we're losing Ed. Okay, well, we're kicking him out.
Poor Totem.
This is the second time in 2 nights. I honestly can't even get rid of him right now. It's not even letting me move him.
Jeez.
It's going to be there. There's literally nothing I can do. But anyways, this will bring us to London Spitfire going up against the Philadelphia Fusion, which should be a very interesting match. So on one hand, you have London Spitfire, who are a team on the rebound for sure. We got to see Bird Rain back in rotation. Prophet has been lights out, but Dojin seems to be back to form. And I don't know what Spitfire have done, but they are definitely really one of the teams that stood out this past week. And you have Philadelphia Fusion, who have looked better now that Sato is able to run a little bit more Winston. And this one is really close. I honestly am very conflicted with this one, because on one hand, Fusion kind of have that X factor when it comes to their clutch capabilities, but Spitfire have just looked cleaner in execution in Stage 2, Week 1. So I am going to lean towards London. And if that's the case, they have to close it out in 4 maps, because if this goes to a map 5, I'm not going to root against Philadelphia. Hey, we lost him.
I mean, at this point, you'd be crazy not to root for Philly in the map 5.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I think London takes it. We're seeing a return to form from Birdring. Fury is once again reasserting his dominance as far as being top 3 in the world off tank. Now, I don't know if that comes off fantasy points wise, personally, in that we have Fury on our shared team, and he's been all right. I have him on a couple other teams. He's all right. He hasn't been putting out blockbuster fantasy numbers like we had hoped. But here's the hoping that improves. Bottom line, I think London takes it. I think it'll be a 3-1. Philly looks very hot and cold. A lot more cold of late. I think that I know we're talking that Sato is a little bit more comfortable on the Winston, but there's still a lot of decisions we see him make that make me scratch my head from an observing standpoint. I think he's definitely the weak point that is going to get picked on. I think Gesture is going to run over him. I think it's going to be London 3-1.
All right, well, let's go ahead and set our unlimited drafts for the week. So, Ramses, I don't know if you have this prepared, but I will go over my lineup for the week, and I
have a couple.
Okay. I will say, going into this current week, this has been the toughest week to kind of call, because when you look at the teams that do have multiple games, so, you have a better chance of having, you have an additional chance at putting up better numbers because it is best game overall. Looks like Ed's trying to get back in. So let me pull him up really quick. So the problem is a lot of the people that I would normally look to put on have what I would consider to be a very soft schedule. So it's a very tough call to figure out, well, do I actually want to run someone from New York Excelsior when they go up against Washington Justice and Florida Mayhem, which are two very potential blowouts. So looking at my lineup, and this is not set as of yet, but my current lineup consists of flex supports. I picked Boombox and Neko. I have Shaz as my other flex support, who is filling in as the captain. For TPS, currently I have slotted Nene and Ivy. And then for the tank line, I have Poco and Meko. Now, with Philadelphia, I feel like their lineup this week, so they face Toronto Defiant and London Spitfire. Those are going to be two very close contested games. But I also don't want to overly rely on one individual team, and that's a chance that in some cases you might actually have to take. And I don't know if this is going to weak for me to pull the trigger on that. Mm-hmm. But there are a lot of situations where, Atlanta has good fantasy options, but they've been making so many changes. It's too much of a risk. You have the Gladiators, who have been putting up monster numbers, but they face a Charge and a Valiant, which should be two very easy games for them. And it's just kind of in a state of flux right now. So when I look at the lineup for all these teams that play two games, you have Atlanta, you have Dallas, Florida, Guangzhou Charge, Gladiators, Valiant, Excelsior, Fusion, Toronto, Vancouver, and Washington. Not a lot of those teams really stand out, especially when the vast majority of the stronger teams have weaker opponents. So I feel like the safest bets are going to be with Dallas, Philadelphia, and Toronto. So if you're looking for staple components, I will look at those three particular teams. But this might be one of the rare situations where you might want to just look at one individual matchup that could go the distance, as opposed to having that additional chance at picking up a stronger performance in a game 2 situation.
Ed, do you want me to give my potential lineup before you destroy mine?
Yep, go right ahead.
All right. So I agree with you, Totem, on a lot of those teams. I think Dallas has a lot of good parts. I think Boston specifically has a lot of good parts to slot in. I know Color Hex and Blase were both in the top 10 as far as points for best format.
Skewed points,
yeah, for best format.
10 matches skews the points. Because they played 10 matches last week. So
maps.
10 maps.
10
maps last week.
Boston's a 5-map team, at least to me.
Can you bank on that, though?
I understand you on it. I'm just thinking here. I think so. Looking at DPS options, I think Blase and Color Hex both are worth a look. I would say Erster also is worth a look. Even this was somebody I had thought with his Junkrat play, with his Pharah play, was going to get a lot of damage dealing capability. I think, of course, we can keep Shaz in. for as long as we are able to. I like Shaz on as one of my supports. I like Aim God as another support as well. He's been consistent. I got burned last week, but I think I'm going to stick with it. Oh, I don't even know. I want to put Izayaki as my captain here because even when Valiant has gotten blown out, he's normally putting up decent numbers until last week. I mean, Izayaki put up 77 points in the one game they played, which scared the heck out of me. So I'm still debating whether or not I want to have him as a captain. I'm not going to put him as a support yet. But as of now, he's in my captain slot. And then I have Envy and RCK as my two tanks currently. Now, Ed, I see the head shake, Totem. I see the head shake. Ed,
all right, so a couple of things. I mean, I'm not saying the players you picked are going to be bad players. It's they have crap matchups. Like Totem said, I would not start a single person from Atlanta this week because they play the Valiant and the Justice. Okay? Mm-hmm. Those are crap games. I would not start a single person from Boston Uprising because they play one match and they play the Spark. So you're the like half the people you listed are playing the bottom three teams, really. Mm-hmm. So it's like I can't support playing people who are going to be playing the worst teams in the league. They may not be top tier themselves, but they're playing the three worst teams in the league. And I can't get behind that. Now, the Toronto teams, like I have Ivy, I have Carpe. I went with Carpe because I think Spitfire Fusion is going to be a very good matchup. And Philadelphia also plays Toronto, which should be a good matchup. So Philly, anyone on Philly is going to be a good call, I think. Mm-hmm. So I went with Ivy and Carpe as my DPS. My supports, I went with Bedosian. Again, because of they only play one game, but they're playing the Fusion, which is going to be a good matchup. I did go with Shaz on this one too, just because out of the two games, he's probably going to have one really good game. And flex supports are right now. It showed after last week they're completely hit or miss.
Yeah.
Completely. The best players in stage one are not playing in stage two this way. So I went with Meko as my flex tank, as one of my tanks. I'm not stoked with that just because they're playing the Mayhem and the Justice. But I'm hoping one of those teams at least makes it a 3-1 matchup. And then I went with Note as my other one for the Dallas. Dallas has a good matchups this week for fantasy. Playing Toronto and playing Paris. In my captain's role, I have my flyer for the week because I like to take a flyer every week. Last week I did it with Elsa, and it worked out pretty well. This week I'm going AKM.
AKM's definitely a solid pick for that.
I mean, he's the clear-cut offensive DPS star on that team. Zachary's good, but he doesn't have to worry about the effect. He doesn't have to worry about the effect of being benched.
Bob's screaming somewhere.
Effect! But yeah, he doesn't have to worry about that. So I even thought about putting Zachary as my ultimate sleeper in the captain's role because they're guaranteed to be in there for every map. Zachary and AKM are. But I went with AKM just for the more, if they do decide to run GOATs, at least I have the Zarya and not the Brig. So that is what I went with. I'm 100% playing the matchups this week. And that's why I thought about Erster. Like, Erster was one of my first thoughts. And then I'm like, ooh. Yeah, that's a real bad matchup. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that is what I went with. So yeah, it's a tough week. It is going to be a tough week. It's going to be a tough couple weeks, actually, because next week sucks as well. Because you start to have bye weeks of teams that are playing and then maybe only playing one matchup because they're all getting prepared for the Dallas shenanigans in week 4 where everything is just screwed. So yeah, this is going to be the last week where it's like, okay, well, there's a lot to choose from. It's just bad matchups. Now it's just we're going to have less to choose from here on out. So should be interesting. I want to get your opinion because you weren't here, Ramses. Who was your MVP of the week?
I mean, personally, I don't know, because I know we all have our different metrics. I would go Aim God, in that Aim God has been consistent for me for the past couple weeks and has been a top off support. I wanted to put Color Hex or Blase up there. In fact, I would probably say Blase if anything. But yeah, it was just weird this last week. Again, I agree with you. For once, I'm agreeing with this method. You can't rely on having 5 maps every single game.
No, but you have to, you can't rely on it, but you have to make your schedule based on it, if that makes sense. Like you have to try and gear your team towards a 5-map series rather than expecting a 5-map series.
If I were to be... Oh, you go.
Oh, I was just telling you, before you were on the show, I was talking about how you lucked out this week. For lack of better words, you lucked out this week against A-Smith, where you had 3 Boston players starting. And you had 30 maps, sorry.
30 maps?
Yeah, between the 3 players. So each one had 10. Right. So you had a starting support, you had a starting tank, and you had a starting DPS for a team that played 10 maps in the week. That is almost impossible to come back from. Mm-hmm. Even if you're playing Justice players. So you hit the jackpot of a fantasy team this week because of that.
You go.
Oh, no. I finished. Go ahead.
I am very fortunate. I am very fortunate indeed. Praise Jeff. I would go with Blase just because he was the one person I didn't expect to have that kind of performance this week at all. Typically, between the 2 DPS, Color Hex has been the bigger point earner over the past couple weeks. I mean, I threw Blase in there as not even a sleeper, but as I need to throw somebody in. I hope this works. Mm-hmm. So Blase has my personal MVP vote for the week. What about yourself, Ed? Who do you got?
Oh, I mean, we went through it. I picked EQO because he was 7th or 8th in DPS, but he played in 2 blowouts. One where they got blown out, one where they blew out. And then Totem had
Prophet,
who was the number 1 DPS player without going to map 5.
All right, so with that being said, guys, let's go ahead and close out the show for tonight. So, we have a number of different ways how you guys can help us out. So, Ed, why don't you go ahead and go through that stuff really quick before I close out with the social medias?
All right. Well, for starters, you can always leave us reviews. We love reviews on iTunes. So show some support for the show by giving us a review over on iTunes or your podcasting app of choice. So any feedback or constructive criticism is always welcome. It'll offer us an insight on how we can make a better listening experience for all of you. We also have Overwatch Recall, which is something awesome where Totem, you find a listing of several Overwatch League and Path to Pro podcasts over on the website at owlshow.com/OW Recall. So episodic listings are released every Sunday night. To keep up to date with the podcast scene, follow Overwatch Recall on Twitter at OW Recall. Hint, hint, this week's episode is going to be awesome. Totem, so you're going to take over for me this week.
Right, I've already done it once this week, taking over for Slambo since he...
I know, this is weird because usually... Yeah, I don't think I've ever heard you say how they can contact the show. So, Totem, how can they contact the show?
Well, at least in this case, I wasn't talking for 26 minutes straight before I do this, so I'm pretty sure I'm going to get this down pat tonight. unlike last night when I I lost my voice during this. So to contact the show, you can go ahead and email us at contact@owlnshow.com. You can find this podcast on Twitter at OWL by the numbers. We also have our website at www.owlnshow.com. We do have our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Overwatch League Network. Join our community over on our Discord at discord.me/OWLN show. We do stream our podcast live 3 nights a week at twitch.tv/OWLN show. And guys, we are a Twitch affiliate, so help support the show by subscribing to our channel. And even Twitch Prime counts too. That's all good. You can earn our network emoticon. And we do stream fairly regularly at the start of the week. Host streams are very hit or miss. Well, more miss because of Overwatch League, but Monday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific time, we have Overwatch League Network. That is our Overwatch League-centric show with my soulmate Slambo, Spider, and of course myself. We do have OWL by the numbers, the podcast you're currently listening to that airs Tuesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific time. That, of course, is our Fantasy Overwatch League podcast. And then Wednesdays, we do have Heroes Never Die, which is our variety Overwatch show where we talk about literally everything about the game and its competitive scene. That airs Wednesdays at 5 p.m. Pacific time. And host streams when available. I've basically been streaming before Overwatch League Network on Mondays for about 2 hours pre-show. Spider usually is on Fridays at 7:30 p.m. PT. But again, this is when we are available. It's not an every week thing. And if you guys would like to support us further, consider checking out our Patreon page at patreon.com/OWL Network. And, you know, we have tiers starting at just $1 a month. So you too can join the likes of Blazing Bob, Brendan, and Gabby in helping our network grow. Thanks again to all of the continued support. We greatly appreciate it. And I know all of the podcasts here in the last month really were just booming stats-wise compared to the prior months. So thank you so much for all you guys who have been listening in. And of course, you know, we have 4 hosts here. You know, you can contact all of us over on social media. Bob is not here. So he's not here to actually plug, the stuff he normally does. But, you know, you can go troll him about how Dallas Fuel is doing at Blazin, that is BLAZZIN_Bob BOB. And, you know, be sure to trash the Dallas Fuel. You know, tell him that he's wrong about the RCK and note trade, all of that good stuff. As for myself, you can find me on Twitter at CTR. But Ed, what about you? How can they get a hold of you over on social media?
All right, you can get a hold of me over on social media on Twitter at Edanar Overwatch. That's EDANAR Overwatch. So come over there, talk to me. I tweet about random things.
I wouldn't know if you would say random things because most of Ed's tweets are just like, lol, Houston, lol.
No. I didn't send out my drunk Guardians of the Galaxy tweets from this weekend.
I was disappointed.
But here's a question for you. Why doesn't Drax have nipples? Like, is he he doesn't. He's shirtless the entire time. And then he went complete Batman suit. Not George Clooney Batman suit, but complete Batman suit. So next time you watch that. Also, when I was watching the second one, so when whatever.
Wait. Okay, Ed, I figured it out. Okay. So, you know, there's the joke about, you know, jokes going right over his head because of his reflexes, right?
Yeah.
So the reason he doesn't have nipples is because Drax doesn't get the point.
That's actually okay.
I have solved the mystery. Okay, so continue.
Chris Pratt's dad, is it Ian? Whatever. First off, why does he need to kill all these children and then keep their bones? I feel there's better uses there. Also, we know there's celestial beings before, like, other than him. Why did he need to go impregnate thousands of people, hoping one will work out when there's other celestial beings? He could have just been like, "What's up?"
A man has needs, Edna.
What? He's not a man.
Also, beings have needs.
Yeah. Also, when he comes back as David Hasselhoff, like in the scene. Why does he come back as like David Hasselhoff in his 60s and not the David Hasselhoff that Chris Pratt's character or Star-Lord knew as a kid? He's like, hey, here's David Hasselhoff, the guy you loved from when you were a child, 30 years older. Why didn't he come back as young David Hasselhoff?
Well, Ed, I can't unlock all the mysteries of the universe, but what I can tell you is where you can go ahead and reach Ramses on social media.
You can find me online at Ramses_OW on Twitter. You can find the other podcast I do, of course, Push the Point, with my good buddy Labosco at Push Point Pod, which these boys over here will start making their way on once we get further into the season. I also am here to claim the skin that I am owed.
Okay, hold on. I have a double or nothing.
I mean, I'm still waiting on mine, so, there's that too.
Double or nothing, Ramses. We play each other in 2 leagues this week.
Dude, I'm not winning either of those matchups, 100%. I want the skin.
You don't want to go double or nothing. I have to win both for you not to get a free skin.
Oh.
But if you win both, you get 2 skins.
Oh, Totem, he's getting me here, dude.
If we tie, you still get 1. But I have the chance to win both, and then I don't owe you a skin. It's double or nothing. You don't lose a thing.
You know what? For the purposes of the show and because I enjoy it, I can't believe you convinced me into doing this.
Booyakasha!
We'll do it. All right.
Channeling your inner Ninja Turtles. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for listening to us again tonight on OWL by the Numbers. This has been episode number 11. I've been your host, Emily Drug, joined fully by Edinar, partially by Ramses, and
partially by me. I did ditch out.
That is true. I mean, you kind of fell into the blackness. You were visiting Slambo over in the Abyss. You came back, B-Live got its stuff situated. We're all good, but we'll see you back next week, guys. Take care. Have a good night.
Adios.